Hello, Madison. It's great to be back. Welcome to Love It or Leave It, the Errors Tour. I've been in the Midwest for 48 hours. I'm going to give you a list of every meal I've eaten. Deep dish pizza, Italian beef, drive to Madison, Culver's. And tomorrow, I return to Los Angeles, hopefully. Gonna make that Atlanta to Barcelona flight seem positively routine. They're gonna need fucking Sully at the helm to get us safely to the West Coast. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Move over Los Angeles. We're gonna milk this crowd for all it's worth. We have an utterly delightful show for you tonight. Chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party, friend of the show, Ben Wickler is here. TJ Jagodowski and Peter Sagal have an incredibly civilized debate about the do's and don'ts of theater etiquette. This is the point where I will remind all of you, we have a strict policy on boberting. I want you all to also know something else. That's a pitch I stole from the VIP meet and greet. Someone paid a lot of money to write that joke for me. And I thank them. VIP meet and greet. Start a podcast, have a few laughs. All right. Alice Wetterland can't find rights on Earth, so she looks to the stars. Felonious Monk takes a retrospective look at the duds that riddled the summer of 2023 as we head into this season of autumn. You may know it as fall. Plus, the rant wheel spins, and we'll hear your live high notes, so think happy thoughts. Brian will be out there at the end. But first, let's get into it. What a week. On Friday, ProPublica reported that Clarence Thomas secretly appeared at 2 fundraising events for the Koch political network, which he did not include in any of his disclosure documents. At this point, I don't know if Thomas is deliberately hiding this stuff or just can't keep track of it all. The man has the social calendar of a Jewish 7th grader. All the bar mitzvahs. That joke would have done slightly better in Milwaukee. This coming term, you get to know the state. This coming term, Thomas and his fellow justices will hear at least one case brought to the court through the Koch network, a case that might limit federal agencies' power to regulate the environment, workplace safety, and consumer rights. But that's the extent of it, just the planet where we live and the things we do on it. Speaking of shockingly brazen corruption, on Friday, Senator Bob Menendez Wait, ready? We're gonna do it again. Everybody ready? On Friday, speaking of shockingly brazen corruption, on Friday, Senator Bob Menendez was indicted on bribery charges. I feel like we got the timing just a little bit wrong. What happened? You were late? Are you ready now? You want to do it one more time? Okay, we're ready. The timing on the guitar riff has to be exactly fucking right for the comedy. And we'll do it all night if we have to. Speaking of shockingly brazen corruption, on Friday, Senator Bob Menendez and his wife were indicted on bribery charges. This is the second time Menendez has faced corruption charges, though he was acquitted after a mistrial the last time. Seems like he learned his lesson, though. According to the indictment, searches of the senator's home and deposit box turned up gold bars and nearly $500,000 in cash, some of which was found in envelopes in jackets embroidered with Menendez's name. The rest, of course, was found in a big safe labeled bribe money. The DOJ claims some of the envelopes, these are the envelopes stuffed with cash in the pockets of jackets, labeled Senator Menendez, had fingerprints or DNA of one of the business contacts accused of bribing Menendez. And to answer your question, it was semen. No, I'm sorry. The indictment also alleges that in 2021, one of the New Jersey businessmen involved in the scheme bought gold bars. Then a driver for one of the other businessmen picked up the Menendezes at the airport, just being neighborly, I guess. You know how it is. You hear your senators traveling and you offer to pick them up at the airport. Then while Senator Menendez was in the car the businessman sent, the associate of the guy who bought the gold bars, in the car, he Googled, how much is 1 kilo of gold worth? Solving crimes used to be harder. You had to navigate subtle clues and construct a motive. Now you just have to subpoena someone's browser history to see if they Googled the phrase, how to dissolve wife bones. Prosecutors allege that Menendez and his wife were gifted a Mercedes by two of their co-defendants, New Jersey businessmen Jose Uribe and Will Hanna, in exchange for Menendez interfering in the criminal prosecution of one of their associates. The confidence of driving around in a fucking bribe-mobile when you've already been indicted once for taking bribes. Were the gold bars too heavy to carry around in a see-through tote? In another corrupt scheme, Menendez allegedly provided sensitive government information to secretly aid the government of Egypt and helped Egypt unfreeze $300 million in military aid in exchange for a no-show job for his wife. Now that's what I call a pyramid scheme. Okay. Thank you. Please. I do it for you. Also on Friday, President Biden announced the creation of a new White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, which will be overseen by Vice President Kamala Harris to coordinate the implementation of Biden's 2022 gun violence law across agencies. Because if they don't, yelled Biden, swinging a Glock around wildly at a press conference as reporters ducked behind their seats. The platform Vote.org saw over 35,000 people register to vote on National Voter Registration Day after Taylor Swift put out an Instagram post calling on her fans to do so. Yeah. Now the pipelines, Taylor. Target the pipelines. Could you imagine? Lawyers for Georgia election workers Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss said in a new filing that Rudy Giuliani has failed to comply with a judge's order to turn over evidence for their defamation suit or to pay them the legal fees they racked up while trying to get him to comply with a previous order. In an attempt to defend himself, Rudy Giuliani scurried up through a hole in the ceiling using some kind of capillary action. Fired ink at them as he moved up into the walls. It's because he's scared, though. There's a stink to it, like a mink. What the fuck? During a pretty during a pretty contentious hearing in which Republicans peppered Attorney General Merrick Garland with a bunch of ridiculous questions, Wisconsin Congressman Tom Tiffany used his time to ask Garland this.
There was a world naked bike ride in Madison, Wisconsin, just a couple months ago, and I sent you a letter 2 months ago asking if you had a problem with that.
First of all, love what you do here. Love the energy. Love that it made Mr. Tiffany so upset. When asked about the naked bike ride, Attorney General Garland replied only, "Ow, ow, 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 my little jurors." And Tiffany didn't really understand that response, hence him raising it at the hearing. Meanwhile, Indiana Republican Victoria Spartz took her moment at the hearing to defend the good people who came to the Capitol on January 6th.
There probably were some people that came on January 6th here, that had bad intent. But a lot of good Americans from my district came here because they are sick and tired of this government not serving them. They came with strollers and the kids, and there was chaotic situation because the proper security wasn't provided.
Look, we've all been there. We're walking the baby around a park because it helps her get to sleep. You see a mob try to rip some cops limb from limb while smashing their way into a famous landmark. You go in. You always go in. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin on Thursday circulated proposals to reinstate the Senate's dress code after Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer relaxed the rules. Manchin told reporters, "This has nothing to do with Senator Fetterman. I just can't look at Chuck Grassley's toes anymore, man." Mexican cartels have grown to the point where they're now effectively the country's 5th largest employer, according to a new study. Why don't you try unionizing that workplace, Brian? See how far you get. According to a new SEC complaint, monkeys that received Elon Musk's experimental brain chip suffered horrible side effects, like infections, brain swelling, and paralysis, which necessitated being euthanized. It sounds bad now, but all that suffering will be worth it when the first people to voluntarily get these brain chips are also euthanized. Musk later said in a misspelled tweet, "To minimize risk to healthy monkeys, we chose terminal monkeys, close to death already. This raises more questions than it answers." "Bring me more dying monkeys," said a billionaire on ketamine to whoever his version of Malcolm is. "I'm only doing this until my student loans are paid off," said America's saddest veterinarian. Yeah. You're right. I don't argue with you. I'm not going to argue with you on that. Astronaut Frank Rubio is scheduled to return to Earth next week after setting a new record for the longest continuous spaceflight for an American. His wife said she can't wait to see him and finally find out, as Frank has been alluding to more and more fervently in his emails the last few months, what the moon has planned for all of us. Alarming. Rubio was originally only supposed to spend 6 months on the ISS, but wound up on a 371-day mission after a coolant leak on a Russian Soyuz spacecraft forced a delay. "That did I do," said Russian Urkel. "That did I do. That did I." It's hard to hit. It's hard to hit. I also don't know if it should count as setting a record if you're stuck somewhere against your will. We admire the people with the world's longest fingernails because they made a choice. Those fingernail people, they're a little bit like quicksand in that they loom so large in the minds of children. Those fingernail people, remember? You'd see them be like, that is important. That's something I'm going to think about and see pretty often for a long time. When I'm growing up, that's important. Those records, the Guinness Book of World Records, what goes on in there is important. That's a big part of what it is to be an adult. Those records and what they mean and how much they mean to all of us. The fingernail thing, big things, little things, long things, short things, tall, short, important, heaviest, lightest, important. That's what being adult is about, knowing that, thinking about that, caring about that. Yeah. George R.R. Martin and 17 other authors joined a class action lawsuit alleging that ChatGPT violated their copyrights by training OpenAI on stolen ebooks, constituting systemic theft on a mass scale. George, let it finish the fucking books. What was that?
Oh, also why the responses suck. They all sound like George R.R. Martin.
Everybody's a critic. And finally, a high-speed rail line launched in Florida on Friday. It's the country's first private intercity train in a century. And before you ask, yes, Floridians are already doing meth and fucking on it. The company, Brightline, will run trains between Miami and Orlando at speeds of up to 125 miles an hour. High-speed rails in Miami and a new train. When we come back, Ben Wickler is here.